Good morning, everybody. Whether you're on the East Coast, West Coast, or around the world, this is your Wednesday wrap-up. And, of course, I am here with my buddy Herb. How's it going, man?
It is a beautiful, beautiful morning. It ended the pre game talk on a cliffhanger, so that's always a fun start, man. But no, good morning, man. I'm happy to be here.
And, of course, we got Raj in the house as well. You guys tried to set me up for some failure there at the end of the show on Monday. So, kudos to you guys. If you guys didn't see that, be sure to tune in on Herb and Raj's podcast because, sometimes they try and do me dirty over there.
Setup is such a strong word. Like, I'm not saying you're wrong.
Oh, no.
It's such a strong word.
So, oddly enough, I have made that a short, and so everyone can see exactly how you tried to set me up for failure.
Oh, wait. You mean they get the whole context of the whole... Oh, well, in that case.
It's on tape.
It's on tape. Oh, you can't argue. The tape don't lie.
How's it going, Win?
I'm not used to this being Win. Like this, so when people on Twitter and stuff like change their picture and stuff, I'm like, I need notifications before you do this because I can't keep up. Okay, when you change your name, same thing. Like somebody's got I need a list or something.
It's tough on Twitter too because their @ is never what their name is.
Right.
So you get so used to seeing somebody and they're like, oh yeah, I want to send them a message. And it's like, what's their @ And you're like, I don't know. It's nothing to do with their name.
Nope, at all.
So we got to start this off on just a bizarre, he's blaming it on sleeping meds,
medication, yeah.
But I mean, he was channeling his inner R. Kelly here. And so basically we have a former NFL player, Goster Chirilis, who originally was a first-round pick by the Detroit Lions back in 2008 and last played for the Bucs. So he's on a flight from Boston to Dublin. And I guess the medication did something to him. Definitely wasn't in his right mind because he ends up getting up and peeing on an elderly person. And they had to have been in enough shock to let him do it for 20 seconds, I guess. And then he ended up kind of hitting another elderly person as he was walking by. I mean, how does that even happen? And then the flight gets grounded, which that makes sense. He gets arrested for disorderly conduct and the flight was delayed by, 4 hours or something. But talk about just a bizarre turn of events. Obviously, he acknowledges that he did all of these things because he, I guess, posted an apology on Instagram. Yeah. But wow.
Yeah. He said the flight was delayed for 4 hours. It did not take off until after 12:30. In preparation for that, I took a sleeping medication I don't normally use, which resulted in a behavior that is not representative of my character. So where did that come from, though? Where, that's a heck of a sleeping med. Was a sleeping med crack? Because,
right.
Beyond, there's so many questions. We need to talk to your doctor. Immediately, I need that guy's name. He's going to hold his own press conference. Hey, nothing to do with this. Don't even know that guy. Never talked to him before in my life. I mean, how is that your first? I don't.
Like you sleepwalking?
Yeah.
Is it so good you were sleepwalking? You thought that person was the bathroom? I don't. I don't know how any of these things happen, let alone all of those things.
No. And it's the tag ex-NFL player that puts this show, out there. And oh my God, it's associated with this. But no. Not playing the ex-player. This has nothing to do with NFL and bad behavior. This is on you. And it's great that he came out with the apology, but behavior like that just shouldn't even happen to start. I mean, just admit it. You drank way too much and you just acted a fool. Let's just go with that.
Exactly.
You probably never want to admit that, but that's what happened.
Well, and I mean, and he probably did take a sleeping pill with alcohol. Yes. I'm assuming there was a fair amount of alcohol involved.
Yes.
Because, I mean, I've seen people on sleeping pills. Never seen anything like that happen.
No. No.
Maybe that's one of the weird side effects, right? They always talk about all the weird side effects. Like, I always like the side effect of worsening heart failure.
Right.
Heart failure? Because that means you died. So
it's all about the phrasing. No. You don't die. It's just heart failure.
that's right.
When it fails, like other stuff happens. Yeah. But does that mean when you read the sleeping thing and you turn it around and you get the bottom, it says "may urinate on fellow passengers"? Like, is that one of the things that you
mean, is that really a deal breaker? Right? Like if it said you were going to pee on yourself, you're like, right. That's probably not the jam. But if it's, if it's someone else, I guess it's okay. You're just like, well, I didn't get any on me.
That's fine. That sounds like an other people's problem sort of thing. So.
And what, this guy was a lineman, right? So, that elderly person isn't going to stop him.
Wow. He's like, I'm not very happy about this, but all right. You got 10 seconds left, I guess.
Right.
That's just an awful, awful flight. That guy's getting free fights for life, I would think, or something.
Imagine being that person. First off, you let it happen that long. I feel like, 5 seconds into that, you probably be like, oh, hey, let me get up out the way here. Yeah. I'd be jumping on the other passengers in my row.
Thank you.
Right.
He'd have got a punch right to the, nether regions.
Well, I guess it depends on how old the person is, but still,
yeah, true,
like I get the first couple seconds of just being in shock. Right. You just be like, what is happening? But I feel like, seatbelts on airplanes aren't super sophisticated. You'd probably be able to like pull that tab and get out of the seat.
He's going to be the subject of the next press conference. Hey, man, what? Why? What happened?
Like 20 full seconds? Why were you hanging out?
And my third question is going to be who was sitting there timing the whole thing.
Right? Well, I'm surprised there wasn't video actually. Like if dude was out of his mind like that, and as many phones as there always are just out, I'm surprised there wasn't something. And maybe there is. This is a story that just happened, so maybe that video is coming out.
Jeez, this is an awful story. It's just.
It's funny, but
yeah, that's what I'm saying. I need you guys to do better.
Yes. See, this is why we never know what people's handles are.
Twitter name, 2 iTunes name, and email. Yeah. I can't keep up. I'm too old.
Too old. All right. So we do have the story that your brother will be interested in. Yeah. And of course, that is Tua calling out Brian Flores, and he was on the Dan Le Batard show. And we do actually have that clip. Now, obviously, you can go watch that entire interview. But for our segment today, let's see, where is my clip?
I was actually watching that again this morning. So,
yeah, it was a good interview. It was a good interview. So, if you're watching, I do recommend, checking out the whole interview. You actually see quite a bit of growth in Tua versus interviews that he had when he first came in the league. So, whether you were a Tua fan or not, it was a good watch. So, let's see.
And then on that vein, while you're calling up, and Tua just comes across as a very likable guy.
Oh, no question.
In these interviews, very relaxed. Dan Le Batard started off the interview with an apology too, so I think that helped as well. So,
yes, he did. Yeah, and the thing is my issue with Tua has nothing to do with Tua as a human,
right?
My issue with Tua is just durability.
Yeah,
which it's
a very fair point for anyone, and it's even more for the number 5 pick and a quarterback. All these things together, You're just way more high profile. And look, so that's me from the outside, right? You're not a Dolphins fan either. Raj is a Miami fan and has leaned into all this criticism. Before this last year, he has said the exact same thing. He's been with that whole thing. So this isn't us like from the outside criticizing Tua or any of that stuff. But I think
Yeah,
even the most diehard Alabama fans who love Tua right now have to like sit back and go, yeah, he did get through one healthy season. Like we got to see two. You know what I mean? So
yeah. I mean,
feel like it's all been fair.
it's actually my only like pause for the contract that he got.
Right.
I mean, if he would have had a couple of seasons like last year, I wouldn't have thought twice about it. Be like, yeah, pay that guy. Makes sense. Right. Like, do I think he's the best quarterback ever? No. Do I think he works well in that system? Absolutely. Right. So, yeah, sure, you pay that guy. But having a guy that was injured through college and up until last year in the pros, man, it's tough to want to do that. So, again, my thing with him has nothing to do with him as a human. Because, I mean, again, when you watch him, he's a very likable guy.
Yes.
But so here is that clip anyway.
Are you surprised that Mike McDaniel told us that you're the most accurate quarterback he had ever had?
Probably not. I would say probably not. No.
Can you explain to us, last question before we get you out, can you explain to us the difference in practical terms between having a coach who did believe in you the way that he did and the difference between that and what was happening with Flores?
Yeah. Well, to put it in simplest terms, if you woke up every morning and I told you you sucked at what you did, that you don't belong doing what you do, that you shouldn't be here, that this guy should be here, that you haven't earned this right, and then you have somebody else come in and tell you, dude, you are the best fit for this. Like, you are accurate, you are the best whatever, you are this, you are that. Like, how would it make you feel listening to one or the other? You see what I'm saying? And then you hear it, regardless of what it is, the good or the bad, and you hear it more and more, you start to actually believe that. I don't care who you are. You could be the president of the United States. You have a terrible person that's telling you things that you don't want to hear, or that you probably shouldn't be hearing. You're going to start to believe that about yourself. And so that's sort of like what ended up happening. And it was, I mean, it's basically been 2 years of training that out of not just me, but a couple of the guys as well that have been here since my rookie year all the way till now.
So, I mean, that is bad in another way, because it wasn't just him being in his ear saying he's terrible, but that means it was getting around the locker room.
Right.
Like, that doesn't help your team get better at all. Obviously, some of that I think is attributed to the fact that Tua was kind of forced on Brian Flores. Right.
That was where I was going to start with. Yep, for sure.
Yeah, like he didn't want him to begin with. They were winning with Fitzpatrick, right? Mm-hmm. They were going to go to the playoffs, and then he gets force fed Tua. It wasn't a great start.
And not only that, he wanted Justin Herbert. So if he was going to pick one of those two, the guy was right after him, and so that and I mean that's just for context. That's like. That doesn't, not me saying, what he's saying is right or doing right.
Oh, no, it doesn't excuse it at all.
Yeah. But for context, he wanted somebody else. And like, I'd actually forgotten the Fitzpatrick part. I'd focused on the Herbert part. So didn't want any of this, and he gets the guy. So that's definitely where it started.
Yeah. I mean, because that was really the beginning of the end for Ryan Fitzpatrick, who was absolutely killing it that year for Miami.
Right.
So, I mean, there was a lot of things that didn't go well. But then this is probably the worst part about it is, let me see here, is he acknowledges that he did those things. So it's not even like he came out, Brian Flores is who I'm talking about. It's not like he came out and was like, oh, I didn't say that. Oops.
Look, I'm human, so that hit me in a way that I wouldn't say it was positive for me, but at the same time, I've got to use that and say, hey, how can I grow from that? How can I be better? That's really where I'm at from that standpoint. Do I feel like that's me? No, but how can I grow from that situation and create a world where that's not the case that anyone says that about Brian Flores? word to use, we're a terrible person.
So, I mean, he fully acknowledges the fact that,
Yeah.
you know, he was saying those things.
Yeah.
And, you know, it's one of those things that we've talked about before, that the league has really started shifting away from hard coaching anyway.
Right.
And it's funny because I don't think offensive players respond great to hard coaching as much as defensive players,
Right.
because there's just a little bit different mindset.
Yeah. Well, I think when you hard coach a defensive player, they go hit somebody to take out their aggression or their anger.
Exactly.
Offensive players like, well, now do I do? Go catch it harder? Like, that doesn't even, you know what I mean? I'm going to throw it harder. That doesn't help everybody. So it's kind of like you don't have that same channel, you know, to get rid of what's coming at you. So, but in this case, it's kind of like there's a line, I guess, between hard coaching, I guess, and just like berating a guy, you know, and it just feels like there was no constructive, you know, in the coaching. Like, hey, I want you to throw it better versus, hey, you suck. You know what I mean? Like, it didn't seem like there was a coaching aspect to it. And I think that's what kind of got to too. Because, I mean, he was under Saban. So Saban was not easy on him, I imagine, at all, you know? So I can't imagine that he never had any hard coaching, but there's got to be some kind of positive reinforcement somewhere in there, especially for your offensive players. So, to Flores' credit, though, man, watching like the interview from like the start too, he does come off, man, is like not the villain of the whole thing. You know what I mean? Like his presence in there and his demeanor, like, you know, he comes off as kind of likable, and he didn't shy away from this. You know, the timing of it, I agreed with him kind of towards the end. Like, you know, they're getting ready for their first game. You know, preseason wrapping up, they're getting for the first game. This is one of those, like, had it happened in June, yeah, we can all talk about it. Let's get a meeting. But I was like, guys, I got a game in a couple weeks. You know, like this is a very random subject to come out of nowhere for him, I would think. So, not that it excuses everything, but timing is everything when you have these stories.
Yeah. No, I mean, obviously it's a bad look. And it's probably, I'm guessing that Tua wasn't even necessarily trying to throw him under the bus.
Right.
It's just kind of how it came out in that conversation.
Right. Well, it's a very specific question that said,
was.
hey, compare your coaches. You know,
Exactly.
So like, what are they supposed to say at that point, you know?
Yeah.
And I don't know if he was prepped beforehand on that, but it was a very specific, hey, tell us what you like and don't like kind of thing. So.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, talk about a wildly different coaching style between the two anyway. Like even without the way this was presented, it was, you know, when you watch the way Brian Flores would coach versus McDaniel, like it so different.
Yeah.
So, I mean, sometimes it's just that.
Yeah. Yeah. When I imagine for McDaniel was part of the interviews, you know, when they were searching for the next coach, hey, Tua is our quarterback. What can you do with him? You know, versus like Flores, I just don't want to at all. So, you know, and if you watch the whole interview, so when the story came out and you see the clips and you hear it, you're thinking, oh man, they had an interview trashing Flores. No, it was like a whole long interview about all this other stuff, and it ended on Flores. So it wasn't like the story's read like Tua just came out one day and go, man, I hated Flores. I love McDaniel, you know, and that's like not how that whole thing went at all. And like I said, again, I don't know if he was prepped on it. I don't know if they knew that's where it was headed, but it just kind of, everyone's going to ignore the whole rest of like the 18, 19 minutes of that interview. And this is now the story, you know? And I don't even know if Tua anticipated that.
No, and that's why I said, like, I don't think he meant to throw him under the bus. I think it was just the way the question came about. But, I mean, at the same time, you are kind of curious because it did end weird. Yeah. So, I mean, it ended with Flores, you know, with the lawsuit, right? So, I mean, like it became a very weird situation. Yeah. So I think some of that might also have led into some of that hard coaching towards Tua as well. Is, you know, he was having a winning season. He was forced to put a guy in he didn't want to. And it ultimately was leading to him getting fired because you weren't producing when he was producing prior.
Right.
And so, like, I actually kind of get some of the frustration that Flores would have had. Again, I don't excuse any of it. Like, obviously, that's not a great way to coach anybody. But, I mean, at some level, you're the coach, right? And if you're handed the players by the GM says, hey, we need these guys, then you got to figure out a way to get your guy ready. And not everybody responds well to hard coaching, right? Like, some people you got to be like, hey, good job. We believe in you. And some people you got to be like, do better. And they're like, okay, let's go do better. So, I mean, some of that is just kind of realizing learning styles of whoever it is you're teaching.
Right. Right. No, and I think that's an excellent point, though. I think there was definitely some frustration in there, for sure. You know, on, like you said, the two levels. Hey, I didn't want you. I wanted the other guy. I couldn't have him. Hey, I want to stick with my guy. Now I'm forced to get the guy that I didn't want in the first place. Like, there's a lot going on there. But like I said, he leaned into it. Yeah, hey, look, I hate to hear that. He even mentioned it somewhere in there, you know, I'm willing to have a conversation with him in the future, kind of clear the air. But like I said, to his credit, he's got a game to prepare for, you know. So it's not, you hate to say, hey, it's the worst timing, but it really is. Like, to Raj's point right here in the comment, like, got to focus on the upcoming season. This is what's coming up, you know. Him and Tua being friends now is probably not on either one of those guys' minds. You know, both have moved on. Both are in better situations right now.
Yep.
You know, Tua is having some of his best seasons, just got paid. Like, let's move on to the next thing. So,
yeah, well, and this will ultimately go away. Obviously, everybody's going to bring it back up now because this came out, yesterday? So, or the day before.
Right.
So,
right.
I mean,
and that's
this
why
is
yeah.
Exactly. It's a brand new podcast that was out. So that's the only reason it kind of brings it back up, because had this not, I don't think anybody's bringing up Flores anymore.
No.
Like, they're all in better spots. And, you know, this team, you know, Miami is producing for they're producing wins. And so everybody's just kind of moved on. Had it been the other way around, where McDaniel comes in and they fell flat, then Flores conversation comes up a lot, right? Because then it's like, okay, they got guys they didn't want. Now the next coach isn't doing very good.
Wait a minute. Oh.
Man.
Really? Where do you even come up with this stuff at? I'm Flores. You know, I can shine without him, but I'm stuck with and manager fires.
Raj out here just choosing violence this morning.
I mean, you know, it's 8:23 in the morning. We can't even get to the 9 o'clock. Love you too, bro. Love you too.
Well, speaking of learning people's teaching.
Can I say what? Can I say
yeah.
one real thing on the Flores thing, real quick? The one thing that we did kind of skip in there, to start his press conference, two of his players came up to the podium with him just in a show of solidarity, and I thought that was cool. And then they actually, one of the local places actually did local news outlets actually did interviews with the players, and they were all jumping to his defense, you know. So whatever's happened in the past, by the interview and by the player. Now, they were all defensive players, though, so it kind of goes to your point. Those guys are the ones. One of the guys even kind of mentioned that, sometimes, you know, you have to take all that kind of coaching and channel it. So I think that goes to your point about defensive players handle that. And he's a defensive coordinator, so maybe that's just more of what he's used to. Maybe he's a much better defensive coordinator than a head coach. But his players currently did come to his defense, you know, and it looks like he's in a better place, so.
Yeah, well, and
everybody move forward.
And that's why I say, like, when you look around the league, all the defensive coach or all the hard coaching coaches kind of found their way out, right? Bill Belichick out, Vrabel out. You know, a couple of the guys that are harder coaches either ended up as defensive coordinators like Flores, or they ended up going down to college ranks, or, you know, they've kind of found their way out of those head coaching positions. So even in the defensive coaches that are head coaches now, they're not the hard-nosed coaches, right? They're still more of what's viewed as a player's coach.
Right.
And so that's just a shift in the NFL. And I think that has more to do with the shift in the kids that are playing, right? Like it's just the new generation of players don't respond well to that type of coaching. So, it's just a different feel. Not to say that it's good or bad or whatever. I mean, it's just different.
It's different. Yeah, I agree.
But
I
yeah,
know
as far as teaching, we finally hear something out of Pete Carroll. So he was on KJR radio here in the Seattle area, and interesting, he has not had any communication with Mike Macdonald at all. I guess they had a conversation once because they ran into each other in the parking lot. So that is bizarre for somebody that was supposed to be a advisor, right?
Right.
They're like, you can't be a coach. Now, obviously, I figured that was going to be a ceremonious role more than anything because they had to pay him anyway. So I figured that was just a way to justify the fact that they were going to owe him like 10, 15 million anyway. But I thought that he would have some communication within the building, but apparently that's not the case. And per this radio show, he's going to be headed back to USC. He's going to go down as a teacher. So not on the football staff at all. He's going to go down and teach. Didn't say what he's going to teach, but that he was going to do that. So interesting. I wouldn't have guessed that he was that like away from the team. I figured being in the building, you would still have some interaction, like probably not a lot with the team itself. Right. But with the coaching staff, I was a little surprised that there were really no communication.
Yeah. This is like kind of one of those just surprising stories. I figured too, if he wasn't going to, this would have happened sooner, because I know me, the second you let me go, I'm out, like, F-bombs on the way out, and like, I'm done. But if I stick around, I'm going to stick around. This just seems kind of like a half measure. Like, hey, I'll be around, but I'm still just looking for a way to leave you guys. You know what I mean? It's like from the outside, those are kind of what it looks like. It's just, I have so many questions about what's really going on inside that building. And
exactly,
was it really just a boot? And like you said, we're just keeping you around because we owed you money anyway. But if you want to leave, you can leave, is what it feels like.
Well, so I don't know if it was that clear cut though, because I think it might have been, you're not going to be our coach, but we're not going to let you leave because we don't want you coaching against us. That's kind of the way that I got that feeling. Like, we don't want you to go on to another NFL staff.
Right.
And from an ownership standpoint, I kind of get that, right? Like, you don't want to fire a guy and then be like, oh, I guessed wrong.
Right.
Like he goes and gets a job and then beats up on you. Like, you wouldn't love that. But yeah, it's.
Which, by the way, that's an interesting counterpoint, because I know this isn't where we're going with it, but what does that say about Bill Belichick, where they were just like, go do what you want, we don't care. Like, coach wherever you want, get whatever job.
Yeah, well, so I think they kind of knew that he would have a hard time getting a job because of the shift we were talking about, that hard coaching is kind of finding its way out of the league, where with Pete Carroll, that is not the way he coaches. Like, he is every bit the player's coach. Right. Like,
his handling of Russell Wilson, was.
Yeah. Well, I mean, like, his mantra is compete, right? Like, everybody has to compete for their roster spot, but at the same time, he wants the players to be themselves. Like, he doesn't want you to be a robot. He wants you to go out and be fiery and be every bit of the personality that you are. Right. So which gave guys like Richard Sherman and,
Sherman was the first one that came to mind when you said
that. Yeah. Or Michael Bennett, or like any of those guys that had kind of fiery personalities, he embraced that. He was just like, yeah, you be you. And so I really thought that he would end up back in the league. So I think that's probably why the Seahawks were like, except you can't. And now that there's no opportunities left open, now it's like, okay, well, if you want to go do something else, go ahead. Right.
But going back to USC to be a teacher, there's just like, I know it has nothing to do with like Lincoln Riley, but if you're Lincoln Riley, do you think something about this? Can you imagine him just being on campus and having nothing to do with the football team at all? And it's just, It's been a long time, so I get that, but it's a strange. And then I'm going to teach. What are you teaching? We'll talk about it later. Like, are you just basically saying you're going back to USC and you're just going to be tooling around in like a robe and sipping coffee or in the afternoon? Like,
yes,
you know what I mean? It's just more questions than answers. Like, what are you trying to say? And how do you feel if you're Lincoln Riley, just to know, that he's coming back to your campus?
Yeah, I mean, like, obviously, I don't know what he's going to teach, but you have to think that this is just a way to get back in the door.
Right.
And then once you're there, kind of work yourself back onto that football field. That's all I can figure, because it just seems like a weird,
doesn't it?
Weird transition, especially to be like, oh yeah, I'm going to go teach something.
Yes. My
that
class
is
called the Legion of Boom.
right. Like, that is so weirdly vague.
Yes. And like, I think about, so, obviously on Alabama's campus, Saban retired. He's still there. He's got an office, right? But I feel like it's, first off, he just retired. He didn't retire and like 10 years later come back on the campus, so it's like, this is kind of more of an unprecedented kind of, like, it just doesn't. So, like I said, DeBoer has leaned into Saban being there, but like, it just happened. Like 10 years from now, will they still be in the same? Like, I can't imagine it. So that's why even then, and then, Saban didn't retire and go, hey guys, I'm gonna go teach, and then just be around. So, and if it is a way to muscle in, like, are you, they just moved to the Big Ten, the defense has fallen flat several years, and here comes Carroll around the corner. Like, does he even still have that kind of pull to muscle in? Or I might, let's be honest, I watch a lot of movies. I could be overthinking the entire thing. I could be going over to teach philosophy and never set foot on the football field. Who knows?
Yeah, there's no way that happens. There's
shooting that down already.
Oh God, yeah. Imagine his energy not having a place to release it. Right? Like, he would seem like the most cracked out teacher you ever had. Right? Like, he needs the football field to be able to like run around and do stuff. So, I don't think he's ready to embrace that.
Yes. Don't be surprised when that class meets on the football field.
Exactly. No, I think I think this will be a way for him to just get back onto that football field. Maybe he ends up being an advisor, right? Maybe he's not a coach. The thing is if the team struggles and he's in that building, there's going to be a lot of people saying, hey, we got a guy in the building that won us a national championship.
And like I said, there's a lot of pieces in motion. They just moved to the Big Ten, had to fire their defensive coordinator because they've been terrible the last couple of years. Your Heisman Trophy winning quarterback has just left. You're known for offense, but you're slotted in like maybe 5th or 6th at your league just to start already. So this could be all of a sudden one of those make or break years for Lincoln Riley. And like you just said, we got a guy that won one over here. Why not just see what he's got to say? So that brings me back to my original question. How do you feel about this if you're Lincoln Riley?
I mean, you can't love it.
Right. You're going to put on your fake smile?
Yeah, I mean, you got to be like, oh, welcome back, buddy. Hope you leave. Like, it's, you can't love it. That being said, if they need a defensive coordinator,
a horrible idea.
Exactly. But they embraced the second part of it too. What time? But I mean, if you're him and you're without a defensive coordinator, then I think you lean into it a little bit, right? Because then you just be like, okay, let's get him in there. Because then if the defense struggles, it's at least on him a little bit, right? So then at least you can kind of displace some of the blame, right? Which is all coaches seem to want to do anymore. I had nothing to do with this.
Yeah, I wasn't even there that day.
Exactly. I didn't know. Yeah. Okay, man.
Until they win, and they're like, "Yeah, I was there. I planned the whole thing. That was me."
Yeah. It's fine. I'm gonna get suspended anyway. Yeah. No, it's I think if you're Riley, you do just kind of lean into it and try and make him your DC, because then at that point, one, your defense needs to get better. Carroll has, he's a defensive guy. So that would make a lot of sense. And then it would be way better than to have him not on the field and struggle, and then potentially have people clamoring for him to take your job, as opposed to get him on the field in a position group that, you can be like, look, we even had the great Pete Carroll and we still have a bad defense,
Yeah.
So I think,
and they did hire a new defensive coordinator when they fired Grinch, the guy that was terrible. So I think that kind of leans into your first point of, I could see him all of a sudden being an advisor.
Yeah.
Now the guy they hired was UCLA's defensive coordinator, and they had a great defense last year. So we'll see, but you still can't fix personnel. They're not a place where defensive players go. You don't really recruit a lot of defensive players to USC. You obviously create, recruit more offensive players. So I could see, like, your first point, maybe all of a sudden he's an advisor because you got a new DC and defense has never been your strong suit. But yeah, that's that foot's in the door, and we'll see what happens.
yeah, I mean, I think that's definitely going to be the route. It's just kind of once he gets in there, then we'll see what happens. I mean, before any of that even happens, I'm just curious what class he's supposed to be teaching.
Yes, that's my bigger thing. I need to look that up. Let me know when he announces it.
Yeah, well, so it's going to be a little while, because I think if I remember right from the article, it was he's going to be teaching in spring of 25. So they have some time to figure out exactly what it is he's going to do. But I don't know. Going to be.
He just called up and said, "Hey, I want to teach," and they just said, "Okay," and that was the whole conversation. That's what this sounds like,
right? Just however you get back in the building, that's we'll take it, I guess. Yeah, I mean, that's mostly what it sounds like. And of course, he's not going to hit the campus until after this football season, right? Because it'll be spring.
Right.
So I think some of that is probably also to take pressure away from the football team this year.
Right.
So I don't know what their new DC's contract looks like, if it's if it's a long-term deal, if it was like a one-off. I didn't look into that, but this is something that I saw, late last night. And I was like, oh, that's interesting that they've kind of now shuffled him out of the building after, leading into this, basically like, oh no, he's going to be a part of the organization. Like, this is going to be great.
Yeah. I think with colleges, like when they hire NFL guys, it seems like the whole contract is like part of the first part of the thing. And when in college, they list everything else but your contract terms. I think you have to go digging for it. I think it's just like a whole different thing.
Yeah. I mean, unless you're a head coaches tend to get that, that contract notoriety. But yeah, all the position coaches and stuff, like they don't, or coordinators, stuff like that. Like they don't really.
Yeah.
Probably because
we don't know how long this guy will be here.
Well, and I think the numbers aren't big enough that people care about it. I think that's probably the biggest part, is the head coaches. They're the ones that are in the millions. And then everybody else is like, all right, you are getting DiGiorno because ordering pizza is expensive. Right? Like the position groups don't exactly make the best money ever. Now, obviously, Pete Carroll going back, they would give him good money. But I mean, by and large, your other guys aren't making crazy money outside of the head coach.
Right. I agree.
But so speaking of another ex-Seahawk, Shaquem Griffin was down at UCF. And he was down there, obviously he was a UCF player, and he was down there to be a speaker at an event. And they honored him with induction into UCF's Hall of Fame while he was there.
That's awesome.
And so they surprised him on stage. Very cool. And if you see the video, you could tell that it took him by surprise. Like he didn't know it was coming, but couldn't have happened to a better guy. And incredible athlete.
Yeah, his whole story, just with the amputation of the left hand and still making it. And when you had posted that we were going over it, I had to pull up his stats again, because I kind of remember at UCF. I didn't realize what a beast he was
Yes.
at UCF. Especially in the bowl game and the undefeated season, and I mean, well deserved honor. And then like getting drafted at that position. I mean, there's a lot of guys out there. Okay, one hand, like this is not going to work. He's made the whole thing work. I know his career was 4 seasons. I hate to focus on that. Like he got drafted to the NFL. Period. That's a better accomplishment than most people are going to see. So no, I mean, just a well deserved honor, man. You go look up his stats, folks. If you're listening to this, dude was just all over the place. He was. I can't think of a better ambassador. And then any interviews you've kind of seen him, he's got a good presence about him too. You definitely want to hear it. What happened?
I thought I was freezing there for a second.
Oh, but no, it's a great story. You love to hear. And the article I was reading, they were like, is he going to get a statue in front of the UCF someday? Who knows? I mean, but could you pick a better person to do it, especially considering the undefeated season and I guess their national championship that they claim?
Yeah. No, I mean, very cool. And yeah, he was an absolute beast when he was at the school. Now, a guy that did get a statue, Archie Griffin, is getting a statue outside the Rose Bowl. Really? So that's pretty cool. He went to 4 Rose Bowls. He went 1 and 3, so not exactly a great record at the Rose Bowl. But he's
why they're doing that. Now, Archie Griffin and Shakur Griffin, they're not related, right?
No. I do not believe so.
and I will not be looking that up to see.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, no, it's but pretty cool. 69 years old, so I think that's more of a lifetime achievement award type of thing. He's one of 2 guys that have made it to 4 Rose Bowls, so I mean, puts him in pretty exclusive territory there. And but pretty cool honor.
Yeah, and especially at a time when like the Rose Bowl is kind of no longer the Rose Bowl anymore. You're not going to see that matchup is gone. Part of the playoff now, and even if the Pac-12 have survived, it's more of the playoff thing now. But now the Pac-12 is not even there, so Rose Bowl is not really the Rose Bowl. So this is kind of one of those last things that you'll see honoring what it was in one of those statues. So
yeah, I mean, I think that's kind of what it was, right? Yeah. Is it's just sort of the death of the finishing touch of the Pac-12.
Yep.
Right. Because I mean, they're not resurrecting that conference. Basically, Oregon State and Washington State are going to take the last bit of money over the next 2 years, and then they're going to fold up shop and go somewhere else.
Yep.
I mean, because there's no benefit to try and build it. Every other conference that has the thought of potentially blending with it, like if you're going to do the Mountain West or anything like that. I mean, what's the Mountain West bring? Boise State?
Right. And that's it.
That's it. Right. Like nobody else is a top tier school. So like, does winning the Pac-12 even matter anymore? Not really.
Mm-hmm. Now that you lost your seat at the table. So it's kind of like you said, if they rebuilt it, where are you getting? You're still in that group of 5. You're almost better off joining the Mountain West and trying to win that, and getting your playoff spot versus trying to make the Pac-12 back into one of the big boys again. So,
well, I mean,
re-invite everybody back in.
Yeah, that's the thing is you're never going to be able to do that, right? Like it's a wrap. We're solidly on the way to the 2 super conferences. I would imagine at some point the Big 12 ends up, blending into either the Big 10 or SEC or something. Because I mean, in fact, I would imagine the ACC does the same thing, right? Yeah. Like over time, it'll be 2 conferences.
Yeah. Well, 2 of their biggest football brands right now are trying to leave in the ACC. So
exactly.
That's not good. And actively trying to leave. So
yeah, I mean, they're only still there because they were getting sued.
Yeah. Yep. So it's a bad look. And I don't know if we're going to talk about SuperCon at some point. I'm against the idea totally. I miss all the regional stuff. I miss the Pac-12. I miss the Pac-12 after dark. And I'm an SEC guy, and I don't like all this watering down. And, I have to look at the schedule now to figure out who we're playing this year, where, before you can name it off the top of your head minus like 2 swing games. Like, oh, yeah, Ole Miss, Mississippi State, you know what I mean? Now I'm like, I think we still play them. I I think these people are still on our schedule, but otherwise you have like no idea. So it's I'm old and crotchety, man. I don't like change like this much.
No, I mean, there's a lot of history to college football that is going away, but at the same time, it's not really college.
So it's not really college football, and then he'll be back in a second to finish that thought. I do like the tradition of college football, though. So
I knew it was coming. I knew it was coming. Yeah, no. So it's not really college football anymore. I mean, it's pro sports at this point.
It is
right.
It is.
So I mean, it's
the worst version of it, though, with the way they've taken free agency to a whole new level with what college football does. It's not even like NFL terms, you know.
Yeah, no, especially because you know, at least in the pros, there's a time limit on trades and, you know, things like that. Whereas in college, I mean, you can be in the middle of the season and transfer portal opens back up.
Yep.
Yep. I don't even know why there's spring games.
Yeah.
Because you have.
I know why.
I mean, you have 2 more times of transfer portal. Everybody that played in that game may not even be on your team.
Well, so what the spring game now has become hey, coach, this is your last chance to show me that I should stay here. So we'll see what playing time I get and what plays you call for me, and didn't like it. Or, hey, this is my last chance to showcase myself before I jump in the transfer portal next week. So
true.
The transfer portal closes I think for the last spring game, it's a week after the last spring game, usually. Whatever the last one is. You know, now if you have your spring game earlier, obviously you've got more time.
Yeah.
But I know for Alabama, I want to say 2 years ago, the transfer portal closed like the week after that game. Anyway, the point being, yeah, the guys showcase themselves a little or try to see, because I know there was a couple of guys in Colorado that entered the transfer portal right after the game ended. So, yeah, that's all they're doing. But like I said, it's even worse because, like, right now the guy plays at your team, and we had several instances of this. Insiders know guys that were called like right after the Michigan loss, like, hey, you know, here's how much money we're offering you to go. That doesn't happen in the NFL. If I've signed a 3-year contract, after year 1, nobody's calling me to go, hey, man, if you just leave your team, you can come over here and just sign with us. Like, no, you signed the 3-year, you're still stuck there. College, they're just like, we're doing whatever we want.
Yeah. No, I mean, I don't know. It's going to be interesting to see kind of where college football goes over the next 5 years.
Agreed.
Because, I mean, I really do think that it's just going to end up being 2 conferences. Obviously, the Pac-12 goes away after next season.
Right.
And then they're going to expand the playoff to 14 teams, which I don't even think is necessary. 12 teams seems good enough. You know, obviously I never liked the 4-team playoff.
That was just dumb.
Yeah. I mean, you got a Power 5 and you got 4 teams. I feel like these are schools that are supposed to understand basic math, but
yeah.
You know,
oh, that was one of my biggest points. Like, you were just waiting to make someone mad.
Yeah.
And then you made someone mad. And I was like, and they're shocked. Like, I can't believe they're so upset. Really? Because they went undefeated in the Power 5 conference and didn't make the playoffs. So, yeah, of course they're going to be upset. So,
exactly.
That was always dumb. But I love the overcorrections here. Okay, 4 didn't work. Let's go to 12. Like, what? That was your next number?
So I like that, though. I actually like 12 as a number because of how many schools there are, right? And so 12 works. Especially because if you're the 13th team, you have nothing to complain about. Like, if you don't make the playoff, it's because you were a 3-loss team, probably.
Right.
Well, if you want to get in, win more games.
We did a breakdown of the SEC last night, and one of the problems with so many teams in the conference is you miss so many other teams. So by our measure, we could have had like at least, 4 or 5 teams finish 10-2 in the SEC. So I feel like that's going to be the first time, like, because I before we did a breakdown of it, I was totally on the 13th team isn't going to have anything to say. But now if that 13th team is 10-2 and like the 5th place team is also 10-2, you're going to be like, wait a minute, and they don't play. That means we're going to some like weird tiebreaker to figure out who is best. It'd be like points scored. Well, that's great. When you played Miami of Ohio, you scored 50 on them. That's awesome.
Yeah. No, I mean, so can that scenario happen? Absolutely. Right. But that won't be super common. I would bet that your 13th team, 12th, 13th team is going to be probably a 3-loss team, especially with super conferences, right? Because now your
Right.
competition goes way up, because it's not like you're playing the 3 good teams in your conference and then some out of conference games that, you're playing Tulane and Temple, and you're just like, oh, let me just write some wins in.
Right.
you know,
Are you saying that we might not have been super accurate on all our game by game predictions before the season even started? Are you Are you saying we're not going to be 100% correct?
Probably. That might be what I'm saying. Yeah. No, I mean, it's that was always the problem with college schedules in the past, is strength of schedule was always kind of a hilarious, subjective type of thing.
Right.
Right. Because people would be like, oh, the strength of schedule is terrible. And then you have like last year's Pac-12 where, you were over halfway through the season and 3/4 of the whole conference was in the top 25.
Right.
So, I mean, but before the season, they're like, oh, yeah, there's only 3 teams that are going to matter. It's like, well, I mean, they sure look like they're killing it. And then, at the same time, you'd end up with coaches that their out of conference games they'd be like, okay, we'll have an out of conference game, but it's only going to be at home. Yeah. And it's going to be teams that pretty sure we're going to win. Right. Yeah. Like it's like, I want to see you beat good teams. I think that's why I've always wanted the playoff system. Yeah. Right. I mean, plus it was the only division of football that didn't have one.
Yeah.
Like I always liked when they're like, the NCAA was like, oh, it won't work in college football. It's like, it works for D2 and D3. I believe that's college football. Right. It works in Pee Wee. Yes. You're trying to tell me that there's more colleges than Pee Wee football? I think you're out of your mind.
Yeah. Just say, hey, I like the bowl game money more than I like the playoff. But don't say the playoff doesn't work. Like, don't bring that up. No. And to your strength of schedule argument, every Alabama fan always says this one. The reason why it's a joke. Alabama started off the year against Florida State, number 1 versus number 3, game of the century.
Sure.
We beat Florida State. They get some injuries. They go way downhill. They finish with a losing record. All of a sudden, the strength of schedule goes down. Everybody's like, oh, Alabama's not playing anybody. We're like, but our strength of schedule was great when we scheduled the number 3, team in the country. So, and then the other goofy thing about strength of schedule is you're scheduling these games like, 5 or 6 years in advance.
Exactly.
Like we have a home and home coming up with Wisconsin. That was probably like 3 or 4 years ago. That was a great game. Wisconsin was, one of the Big Ten leaders. Obviously not, on the Michigan, Ohio State, but they were still making the Big Ten championship game. That was probably a great game when it's scheduled. Now it's like, okay, this could be a good game, but the team is not the same. So all these factors kind of go into it. And like you said, strength of schedule is so subjective from what you think, and it changes from what you think from the beginning of the year to end of the year. Got a team that wasn't ranked and all of a sudden ranked, my strength of schedule goes up. Well, they're still the same team that you guys looked at when we started the year.
Yeah.
But now you're they won a couple of games, and now you're like, oh, maybe they're good. All right, congrats to you guys playing a better schedule. Nothing changed.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, well, I mean, and that's one of the things that I've always had a problem with college football in general is the voting aspect of it.
Yes.
Like, first off, West Coast teams always got hated on anyway because the entire voting body's on the East Coast.
Right.
So it was either they have an East Coast bias or they just weren't watching the games.
They weren't staying up late, let's be honest.
Yeah, right. They're not staying up till midnight to watch a UCLA game or, something like that. So, the voting was always, I always thought it was dumb. And especially when you look back at all of the shared national titles.
Right.
Now, obviously my Huskies had one of them, but it's not like it was a one-off thing. NCAA did that a bunch of times. They're just like, oh, we don't know. I guess you guys can share it. Like, what is it? Last thing I want to do is a tie. I hate ties. Yeah. That's why I don't watch soccer. They're the worst. I don't want to see an entire season go by and be like, yay, up top, we both get a trophy. Like, I would rather
I want a
win
winner.
or lose in that situation. I don't want to like share a trophy, be like, oh, we battled out and I guess we both are winners. Like, I
Yeah.
don't know. I'm a little too competitive for that, I guess.
And I agree with you. The biggest thing you can tell that voting is a sham is we start off with a preseason top 25. We haven't seen these teams play games. Now, look, Georgia's number one. Do they deserve? Yeah, I think they're the most, best team in the country. But
Sure.
what do those rankings actually mean? Especially once you start getting to like the 10 through 25 range, you guys are just guessing. You have no idea. But it shapes your perception of. That's why every year they're like, oh, can a team from outside the 25 make the playoff? Top 25 make the playoff?
Of course.
So you're behind the 8 ball though, because it's just tougher to get in. You're behind the 8 ball because of what a number that somebody made up before the season started. So it's tougher, So like to our other example, if you're outside the top 25 and you lose 2 games, or if you're ranked number 9 and you lose 2 games, that number 9 team has probably got a great chance of still making the playoffs at 10-2 versus you not making it because of where you started and because what somebody looked on your roster and said, I don't think this is a very good roster. They're ranked number 31 to start the year or something like that. So
yeah, especially the preseason rankings. I'm with you. It's like they make absolutely no sense.
They're
like
there to sell games.
Some of the schools you get because you're like, okay, I saw a lot of this team last year, got a lot of returning stars, but on the teams that really got gutted, but they're just like, oh, they're Alabama, they're always going to be good, or whatever, right? So like you guys could have had a completely decimated team. Like if you guys went through the same thing Washington did, right? Washington's on the outside of the 25, which they should be. If Alabama did it, you guys would be ranked like 18.
Right.
Right. In the same scenario, no coach, no players, like everybody was like, I'm out. But they'd be like, oh, it's Alabama. They're top 20 for sure.
Right. And that's like we climbed into like the top 5. Sorry, I mean to cut you off there.
No, you're good.
And I'm looking at it and I'm going, why? Can't we just stay slid down? It's fine. We're going to have plenty of big games, chances to prove ourselves. Like I'm good with the lower rating. But like that last ranking, you jump up like, 4 or 5 spots, depending where you're looking. I'm thinking, why? Like you guys haven't even seen anything yet. So no. Flat plays Florida State. Oh gosh.
Right on.
We always bring up that one just because the perception of that game changed because Florida State ended up bad. And we're like, yeah, because we beat them up and their season kind of went spiraling. But
sure,
don't forget what you guys said before that game started. Game of the century. And then Alabama doesn't play anybody. I'm like, which one is it?
Well, and that's the problem with the voting, right? I mean, that's like, during the season, I'm sure we'll do power rankings of teams. It's subjective.
Yes.
Right? Because especially early on, you're going to be looking at how that team produced last year because you just don't have enough film of the current year, right? So you'd be like, oh, that was a playoff team last year. That game matters. And then, halfway through the season, you're like, oh, you know what? I guess that game didn't matter because that team is going to try and put the number 1 pick. Right. So, I mean, it is subjective. It's hard to do, which is why I don't like that the playoff was predicated by it.
Yeah.
Right. Like I want to see records matter. And, if Florida State being held out, being undefeated showed us anything, his records didn't matter.
Yeah.
So that was probably my biggest problem with it and why I like that the playoff is going to be there, because then at least the people being held out, there's no way the 13th guy is also going to be undefeated.
Yeah.
So will it be subjective? A little bit, but at the same time, win more games than you're in.
Yeah. Yeah. And your top 4 are conference champions. So you're getting the best of the best there already. And then, everybody else might be fighting for those other spots, but when you're conference, you don't really have that big argument, I would think.
Yeah. Well, and that's really my whole thought on it. But that does get us to the top of the hour here. Appreciate everybody tuning in. If you're on YouTube, be sure to like and subscribe. If you're on Roku, stay tuned for the next hour. Other than that, we will see you all next week.